counterintelligence agencies. What a time to be alive. You look at history, you say, well, that's already happened, and you can contextualize it and understand it and analyze it. Or we can project it to the future, you know, someday away, and you know, you don't have to be too accurate because it's someday away in the future. But when you're living through it, it's both exciting and troubling, because you've got to know the word. You have to spend time. There is no shortcutting spending the time in God's word and understanding, you know, what we have for today. Now, I mean, I'm prefacing what I'm going to say, but if you take home nothing more from what I've said to you today, take home this. If you want to get a full picture of what it is God has entrusted us in terms of truth, take those 5 volumes of the Conflict of the Ages series. Yeah. You can read them in under a year if you read a chapter every day. Yeah. 5 books, 1 year, and you've still got a year left when you're finished reading them. Yeah? You know what they all are, don't you?
Patriarchs and Prophets.
What's the first one? Let's do them in order.
Patriarchs and Prophets.
Yeah.
Prophets and Kings.
Yeah.
Desire of Ages. Acts of the Apostles. And Great Controversy.
And when you finish that, latch on to the 9 volumes of the Testimonies for the Church. I'm alarmed at how little, as a church, we actually read the testimonies that were written for us. You know, it's absolutely amazing what those 9 volumes contain. Now, from time to time, you know, we'll hear sort of quotations from them. From time to time, we may even sort of dip in and out of them ourselves. But to read them systematically, I think, is absolutely powerful. And it's what we need for where we are today. The scriptures were written. Yeah? Stop the press. Front page news. The scriptures were written for those who will be living at the end of time. Yes, it was great for everyone who's been living throughout history, but you know, ultimately, all of those examples and all of those records were written for us. Lying in bed this morning, and you think about heaven, and you think, man, it's going to be great to see people like Abraham and David, and man, when David and Uriah meet, I want to be looking at that. It's going to be okay, because they're both in heaven, they both made it. You know, Uriah's not going to be angry, you know, he's going to understand. You know what I'm saying when I say David and Uriah? Yeah. But you know who they're going to want to meet? They're going to want to meet those who have stood the test through the final moments of Earth's history. They're going to want, what was it like? Because all of their testimony, all of their witness, the life that they lived so that we could have the example, was all for our benefit. So they're going to be falling over themselves to meet that group of people who have managed, the first in history, to stand in perfection. Yeah, I know that we've got people in our ranks who take the word perfection, add an ism to it to make it something negative, you know. But the Bible says those who stood on Mount Zion with the Lamb, in Revelation 14, 1-5, verse 5, said in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without, and if you are without fault, you are, you know. It's very clear what has to happen. So anyway, today, counterintelligence agencies, what do I mean by that? The Bible is very clear. I'm not sure whether it's... can you see that clearly on the background? You know, we are to be investigators of detail. Everything we are supposed to do is supposed to be in detail. There's this saying, isn't there? You know, the devil is in the detail. That's rubbish. The devil hates detail. He likes generalities. God is always in the detail. And, you know, we have to inquire, make search, ask diligently. That is why, that is what God expects of us. We are to show due diligence in everything that we do. We're not supposed to do anything half-hearted. If you allow me to make a verb out of a noun, you know, the Bereans We are supposed to Berean out everything. We have to search the scriptures diligently. Now, I'm not here this morning to talk, for example, about David Gates and his latest offering, time and place. But the point that I'm making is that you've had all kinds of reactions of varying quality to what he has said. Yeah? And what I am saying is that what you need to do is to Berean it out. Don't jump on any bandwagons. Don't place your soul salvation in the hands of elder so-and-so, pastor so-and-so, president who and whatever. This is about you, your family, and your soul's salvation. So you have to Berean out everything. And God will lead you. God will lead you. In the time in which we are living, God will lead you to the truth of all matters. Very well-known text, passage from Great Prophecy, page 622. The time of trouble such as never was is soon to open upon us. I'm sure you've been through this many times. We shall need an experience which we do not now possess, and which many are too lazy, too idle, too indolent is the word she uses, to obtain. It is often the case that trouble is greater in anticipation, wait till your father gets home, syndrome, than in reality. You know what it's like, you do something wrong, mum says, wait till your dad gets home. Yeah? And you spend all the time worrying, oh my goodness, Dad. And when Daddy comes home, nothing happens. He might say the odd few words to you. But, trouble is greater in anticipation. It's often the case, she says. But that's not the case here. The trouble that we're talking about coming on this planet, he said, the most vivid presentation, I don't care how articulate you are, I don't care how imaginative you are, the most vivid presentation cannot reach the magnitude of what is coming. And then she says, though Noah, she quotes Ezekiel 14:20, though Noah, Daniel, and Job were in the land. My brother Adriel, some of you know him, did an analysis of this. It was brilliant. Why is it that there are just those three names? Why did those three names get chosen? It's because Noah, the trouble that came to Noah was of global proportions. It was a worldwide flood. The trouble that Daniel experienced was a local. It was Babylon. The trouble that Job experienced was personal. The trouble that is coming on this planet will be of global, local, and personal significance. It's going to affect us on every level. And we have to put our trust and confidence all in God. So what do I mean about counterintelligence then? Counterintelligence is all about information. It is information sensitive. Those that are engaged in any form of warfare will always have their counterintelligence agencies at work, gathering information, sifting through it, casting out the wheat, the chaff from the wheat. Yeah? And I haven't got time to go through each of these, but in terms of the type of counterintelligence that I'm talking about as God's people living at this time in history, we have to understand who we are. Yeah? I'm sure that this is, again, I'm assuming this is something that you've, whether collectively or individually, looked at. There's been a lot of focus in recent times on this identity crisis that we are facing as a people. We have to know who we are. We've got to know the nature of our mission. We've got to know what we are trying to protect and why. God has entrusted to us. You know that well-known Seventh-Day-Adventist text, Revelation chapter 12, verse 17. And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, who do what? Who keep. That word keep in the Greek actually means not just to observe, but to preserve. God has entrusted it to us. He's entrusted that to us. So we've got to know what we're protecting and why. Got to know who our enemies are. We are to gather and study all relevant information, understand how the enemy operates. I think the next slide after this is the one from, I think it's 2 Corinthians, where Paul says, look, the only way the devil is going to get an advantage over us is if we are ignorant of his devices. You've got to understand how he works. And we've got to know that the goal, our goal, is to defeat the enemy. And we know that how that, there we go, 2 Corinthians 2:11. Yeah, the only way that Satan will get an advantage over us is if we are ignorant of his devices. So it's important to know how he works. Again, I thought it was important to throw this in, that, it's not about might is not always right. Yeah? When you take a look at First Chronicles, and you go through, just step over here a little bit, and you go through, all of these brethren, and you think, well, Judah, you could just see him high-fiving. Nearly 7,000 we've provided, footmen on the ground. Isn't that brilliant? And then, Ephraim sort of wades in and says, that's nothing. We're providing 22,800. High five, everybody. Yeah, isn't that great? Wonderful. And then you get down to the Danites. 28,000. You're joking. Zebulun, 50,000 boots on the ground. And then they join the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half of Manasseh and say, that's nothing. We're providing in this warfare 120,000. Isn't that great? And then you get the children of Issachar kind of, stepping forward, and they say, well, beat that then. Beat 120,000. How many did they come up with? Anybody remember? They said, well, we've only got 200. Excuse me? You're providing what? 200, yeah? But that 200 was critical to the entire mission. If they didn't have these 200, then the entire mission would fail. Why? Because it says the children of Issachar, with their little 200, they were the men that had understanding of the times to know what Israel ought to do. Amen. So it's not about might being right. It's not about numbers. It's not about how much you know. It's about who you know. It's about who you know. It's that, that well-worn phrase. It's that relationship with the man Christ Jesus. Yeah. And, sometimes you wonder, is there a different way of saying it? Is there a different way of saying that so that it can connect with young people? So that it can connect with individuals that have been hearing that same phrase year after year, decade after decade. And the truth is, there's no other way, there's no simpler way to say it. You have to have a personal relationship, a one-on-one, a time-sensitive relationship with Christ. That's the only way. That's the only way we're going to understand the times and know what it is that we ought to do. So, back to Ellen White. She says in, what was this? 1903, the work of the people of God, it's very simple, it's not complicated, it's to prepare for the events of the future, which will soon come upon them with blinding force. You're not going to see it coming if you're not watching. The word of advice that Christ left with the disciples, which was going to cascade down to us, was to watch. Watch. You can't afford not to watch. I've got friends who are Adventists, who said, having a conversation one time, he talked about, watching news, what's happening in the news, and they said, I don't watch the news, and I don't like it. You're not supposed to like the news, but you're supposed to be aware of what's actually taking place. How else are you going to know what's happening and what isn't happening? How you can be an Adventist and not spend time listening, reading, appreciating the news is totally beyond me. But we have to be aware, we have to watch. Because the word is, it's going to come with such force, such speed, that we're not going to see it coming. The other thing that she says, that I wanted to highlight in early writings, page 63, is that, look, there are lots of things in the Bible that are precious truth. In fact, everything in the Bible is precious truth. But not everything is present truth. And folk get confused over that. So if you say, the death of Jesus on the cross is precious truth, but it isn't present truth, folk kind of get uncomfortable and they think, well, what do you mean by that? You're talking about the death of Jesus here. The death of Jesus on the cross and understanding his death on the cross is milk. It's the foundation of everything. Remember, you can't build a building without the foundation. It's the foundation of everything we believe. You talk about the love of Jesus. It's the foundation of everything we believe. We can't do anything without the love of Jesus, understanding the love of Jesus, fully understanding what Jesus did on his cross, on the cross. But it's foundational. You know, you can't move until you have that foundation. But it is the milk of the word. It's the milk of the word. Paul talks about the milk of the word. But he says after a while, if you continue to feed a grown child milk, you're going to kill them. Stone dead. You've got to move on to the present truth. And it's clear, it is present truth that the flock needs now. Satan will use every advantage he can to obtain to cause souls to become clouded and confused and perplexed. But God never leaves the world without men and women who can discern between the good and evil, righteousness and unrighteousness. God has men and women whom he has appointed to stand in the forefront of the battle in times of emergency. And I say and women because she was obviously one of them, you know, and so on. And she speaks of young people, wanting to make that point. Satan isn't not an idler. He takes every advantage of every opportunity. He's at work. Just wanted to get this message across. He's going to entangle in every snare that he can devise. Our conflict with Satan and his host must be earnest, must be determined, must be focused. Yeah, and we are not to be deceived. Very, very important. Now, some of us get deceived by thinking that because we know what we know, that it's impossible. You know, we don't really have to do all the things that the word has advised. What we'll do is that, you know, we know what we know, and when we see something happening, you know, because we know prophecy, then we're going to move. We'll make our move. Yeah, is that likely to happen? Is that possible? Again, I've got loads of friends who have left the church, and when you bump into them, you know, in town or wherever, they often say, you know, yeah, man, I know I'm going to come back. I know I'm going to come back. I know the prophecy. When I see so and so, then I'm coming back, man. I'm coming back. Those of you that remember 9/11, when 9/11 happened, yeah, you couldn't get a seat in a Seventh-Day-Adventist church in New York for about 3 months. By the time you got to 6 months, apparently attendance was worse than it was before 9/11. Yeah? There's a thing called the love of the truth. Yeah? You can become excited for a moment, but that's not going to sustain you for very long. And we've got so many examples of that. Remember Lot, when the angels came to visit Lot. Yeah? Now, they asked him, you know, do you have anybody else in the city? Any other relatives and whatever? And Lot says, yeah, I've got my daughters and their sons-in-laws, right? So the angel says to Lot, you know, off you go, get them quickly. So Lot turns up at his daughter's house. And I find it interesting that his daughters do not come to the door, you know. They send the husbands. Oh, it's my dad again. So they go, the husbands come to the door, and Lot speaks to them. Now, if Vince calls me and says, Patrick, you're not going to believe this. I've got 2 angels in my house. Yeah? I'm going to look at my watch and think, you know, has he been eating pizza and going to sleep late again? You know, but I'm going to say, Vince, what are you telling me? He says, Patrick, I've got 2 angels in my house. Get over here now. Right? Am I going to kiss my teeth and say, what you're calling me at 1 o'clock in the morning for? Or what? Or am I going to jump in my car and hightail it to Vince's house? Yeah? He came to his family and told his sons-in-law and his daughters, you know, 2 angels in my house. This is what they've told us. The city's going to be destroyed. You know, at the very least, they should have gone over there. At the very least. What did they do? Yeah? What does Scripture say? It says he seemed as one, you know, that was crazy. He seemed as one that was just talking nonsense. Seemed to them as one that was mocked, and they didn't move. They didn't move. Yeah? And even when Lot got back home, the angel had to grab his hand, the hand of his wife, the hand of his daughters, and get them out of the city. So it's not true to say That just because you know what you know, that's going to see you through. No. You've got to live this stuff. You've got to breathe this stuff. You have to receive, as the scripture says, the love of the truth. What about Samson? Remember the story about Samson? Samson was dealing with this Delilah. She had spilt the beans on him, betrayed him, and despite being told what he should do, he says, "Oh, I know this stuff. I know this stuff. I've been through it so many times before." And what happened the third time? He got up. He says, "I shall what?" He woke out of his sleep and said, "I'm going to go out as other times before." But he didn't know the Lord had departed from him, and it couldn't happen. He couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. What about Noah? Yeah? What about Noah? What is wrong with these people? Didn't they see the animals walking into the ark? If nothing is going to trigger your brain to say something has happened, something has changed here, this is massive, look what's taking place. Ellen White says, no. Sin had so clouded their minds that even the most dramatic event happening in the world around them, they couldn't see the significance. And that's what's going to happen in our day. We all think, wow, this stuff is going to happen, and then I'm just going to click. It's not going to happen. Because there will always be a reason, there will always be a way of you trying to explain it away. Yeah? Have you heard the way they explain away the 10 plagues? That you had, there was a problem in the sea, in the river, and then because of that the frogs came out, and then the frogs died, and there were flies and lice, and they get about halfway, and they think, well, okay, so how did we get the darkness? Yeah? How did that affect the hail? How did that? But they still couldn't see. I mean, you clearly know the story. Yeah? So we come down to, I'm not going to spend too long on this, but we come down to our time. Yeah? In November 2014, Francis shows up at he's invited to the European Union. And he stands before the representatives there. Yeah, they're representing 500 million citizens across Europe. Yeah, 28 member states at the time. And what does he say? Yeah, he says, "Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you." No, he doesn't say that. He says, "Thank you for giving me the opportunity of speaking through you to the citizens." And you read that and you thought, oh, why didn't he just say, "Thank you for speaking to you"? Give me the opportunity of speaking to you. Or why did he just look into the camera and say, "I'm now addressing the 500 million citizens across Europe"? He didn't say that. Through you. Why? Because he's speaking to those who are legislators. Folk looked at that and thought, no, perhaps he misspoke. A year later, he shows up in Congress. And he's speaking to the joint houses of Congress in the Capitol building. And what does he say? Google it, read his speech. He says exactly the same thing. He says, "Today, I would like not only to address you, but I would also like to address the people of the United States." No, he doesn't say that. He says, "I want to address you, and I want to address through you." Well, how does he address the citizens through the legislators? Obviously, through legislation. If you blink, you miss it. But as Seventh-Day-Adventists, we are watching. Yeah? Earlier this year, he made a call to the sleepers that he's got, politicians in various countries around the world. He says, now's the time for the Christian politician. What he meant was the Catholic politician, and those apostate Protestants who are also now siding with the papacy, to be called to witness. And then this thing about fighting the fundamentalist regimes. Again, this is something that I'm sure you've looked at. You don't have to stand on your head these days to be, or carry weaponry to be a fundamentalist. All you've got to do is believe that the Bible says what it says and believe in what it says, and you fit that scenario. What is it about this man? What is it about Pope Francis? Is there anything different about Pope Francis that we can look at? No, Adventists are always trying to see something about somebody. You get a new pope, and then they start looking. Is there something special about him? But in truth, this particular one is here for a particular reason, a particular function. Having said that, when you take a look at the write-up, so he's been pope for a couple of years. He came in 2015. John Allen. If you Google John Allen is the premier Catholic journalist in the entire world. Yeah. If you look at his accreditation in terms of who he is, where he's been, and so on, he is the number one journalist for the Catholic Church. But he is a Catholic journalist. It's worth Googling just to look at what his list of accreditations, what it looks like. But he was writing in Crux, this Catholic paper, and he said, "Look, all right, this is the man on the inside. There's something different. When you look at this particular pope, something different about him. He says." It can't be adequately accounted for in terms of purely human calculations. Yeah? He says there's something that requires a supernatural or mystical point of reference. What? What are you talking about? Yeah? And he says that when you look at how he was as Cardinal Jorge Maria Bergoglio, you don't recognize him now as Pope Francis. The two men just, there's a dissonance between them. And he says, you know what? He says, I went to speak to his sister, his only surviving relative. And his sister says, you know something? He says, I don't recognize this guy either. Is what his sister said. He said, what? So, the Catholic Reporter says there's something mystical, there's something supernatural about this guy. The difference, the change from cardinal to pope can't be accounted for in just human terms. He goes to visit his only surviving relative, and she says, I'm his sister, but I don't even know who he is. I don't recognize this guy. He then decides he's going to go to Pope Francis, his best mate. So when he was a cardinal, he had this best friend. Also from Latin America. He's another Latin American cardinal. Yeah, known him for decades. But he wanted to keep. Says the cardinal who didn't wish to be named, for obvious reasons. Because what's he going to say? He reported to John Allen that he said to him, "You know what? You're not the same man I knew in Buenos Aires. What's happened to you?" His best mate doesn't recognize him. His sister don't know who he is. And the Catholic Reporter has reported on, everything Catholic from as far back as you can, in his career. Also, he's saying that there's something strange. Some folk have said this mystical thing, this supernatural essence, if you like, is demon possession. He's possessed. He's possessed by something. That's how they've chosen to package that. And it says, look, we can look at various things around us. What's happening? Says, look, this is no time for people of God to be weaklings. Some of us don't really have the stomach for the fight that we're supposed to be in here. In Jude, verse 3, it says, "Beloved," and he says a few things. And he says what? Contend. The word contend, it's the same word, has the same root as the word that Paul uses when he says, I have fought the good fight. I have fought the good fight of faith. That word contend means to fight, grapple, wrestle. For what? For the faith that was once delivered unto the saints. I'm here today. I wasn't going to go through anything in particular in terms of, the things that we've been doing as a church. And you have one part of the church saying, well, no, that's not what it means. And then the other part of the church is saying, well, yeah, this is a bit strange. Fundamental belief number 25, number 18, where we've changed. And this always gets me, the 2015 General Conference session, they changed a number of things in our fundamental beliefs. Most notably, though, fundamental belief number 80 and number 25. They took the word imminent out, that we believe that Jesus' his return is imminent. And they put, in the place of imminent, they put near. And they said, well, Jesus said, what we wanted to do was to make it easier for translation, because the word imminent, which means very soon, doesn't actually translate into other languages. They find it difficult to translate the word imminent. So they've taken that out and they said, well, Jesus never used the word imminent anyway. He used the word near. Yeah? So we put the word near in. You know? And you think, well, what a wonderful reason. No, that's reasonable. You know, they've used the word that Jesus used. And most people have said that and they've looked at that, you know, and then they've moved on. Yeah? And I just shook my head and said, you know what? When you don't know the scriptures, you'll be taken in by the most seductive of explanations. When Jesus said that his coming was near, he qualified the near by saying, remember, in Greek, there are no verses, there are no chapters. So when Jesus is speaking, he said, you know, my coming is near, even at the doors. Even at the doors is in the next verse. So he qualified the near to say, it is not just near, it is very near. In fact, he said it is imminent. That's the whole point why the pioneers put that word in. That's why that word is there, imminent. It's because put the word near in, unqualified. And when you look at the word near, you know, I wasn't here, I wasn't even going to mention this, but it's just this thought that, you know, we are to contend. And then you get on to the change that was made in terms of the spirit of prophecy, you know. And I listened to one explanation by a very eminent Adventist that said that, you know, they didn't really change anything. If anything, what they did was reinforce what the church believed. And he went through his entire explanation of that change. And not once did he mention that the phrase, the Lord's messenger, was taken out. You know, as the Lord's messenger is removed. You know, and not once in his entire 20 minutes of explanation did he focus on the fact that that had happened. He focused on something else. And I thought, you know what? With the greatest respect, that was a dishonest presentation. Because you should have mentioned, you're being accused of changing that fundamental belief. And so you should have addressed all of the changes, not just the ones that were easy to explain. Yeah? So there are things that are happening amongst us, and some of us haven't got the stomach for the fight, you know? But now is not the time, she says, to be weaklings. We've got to stand up. We've got to watch. We have to see what's happening, and our vision, our watching. Remember, this is about counterintelligence. Counterintelligence has at its heart information gathering. But it's not just about gathering the information, it's being able to sort the information through. This is rubbish, this is sense. Okay, now then, what impact does this sense have, you know, on the church, on me, on the truth? This is not the time, she says, to be weaklings. Yeah? We need to know and understand where we are. And again, I just threw this in. I don't know how many of you actually follow this. Do you all follow this? This is the Doomsday Clock. Doomsday Clock was actually set up in just after the war in 1947. And the folk who have gathered to set up this Doomsday Clock are the creme de la creme of atomic scientists. On the actual board committee for the Doomsday Clock, you have 19 Nobel laureates. Yeah? I don't know of any other committee anywhere in the world that has 19 Nobel laureates, you know, creme de la creme of the atomic scientists. But they've all gathered together, and they've been here from obviously it's replenished over the years, but since 1947. And they've got this clock, this Doomsday Clock that they call it. And when you get to 12, on the clock. Yeah? It's like a countdown to what they call global catastrophe. So when you get to 12 o'clock, yeah, that is global catastrophe. All hell is to break loose. Yeah? So they can set the long arm of the clock face to whatever. So, if they go to the 1, then they're saying, well, that's 55 minutes to global catastrophe. If it goes to the 6, then it's half an hour. It's just their take. These are not religious people. They're just looking at world affairs, what's going on around them, government, politics, military, the economy, and so on, socially, and they set the time. Right. If you look back at 2016, yeah, and they set it every January. So in 2016, they set the clock at 3 minutes to midnight. Yeah. I shake my head because there are those amongst us who have been Adventists for a while, yeah? And we go on like if it's, I won't even say what time we think it is, because sometimes I don't think we even think there's a clock. 3 minutes to midnight. These people who don't know what you and I know. They have no clue in terms of what you and I know. That's where they set the clock. Anyway, they rolled on to, is this 2017? To 2017. There we go again, January 2017. And they put it forward. Yeah? To even closer. 2.5 minutes to midnight. Remember, midnight is global catastrophe. Yeah? God says that if my people are not doing what they do, then the stones are going to cry out. So we roll on to this year. And what did they do this year? I've got it here. 2018. There we go. Yeah, so that's 25th of January this year. What did they do? It keeps going. It's now 2 minutes to midnight. Yeah? I don't know how many pointers God has to give us. Yeah? So we have pointers in the world. He's got these atomic scientists with this great big clock that they parade in front of the world media every January. And, we look at it, we see it, perhaps we don't see it, but it's right there. And God is saying to my people, hello, somebody wake up. Yeah, but we all know the story. There were 10 virgins, and only half of them slept. Every one of them slept. Yeah, every one of them was asleep. And again, I thought it was interesting that in Great Controversy, Ellen White says, you know what? These atomic scientists have got midnight as global catastrophe. And she uses midnight. She says, it is at midnight that God manifests his power for the deliverance of his people. I thought that was a nice irony, but agreement as such. Some of us look to the economy, and we think, that because we hear what they say on the news, that is right. I'm going to show you some quotations by one guy. His name's Gerald Celente. He's one of the top trends forecasters. He looks at, I think it's over 300 different factors. I don't know what he actually calls them. But, he's an economist, but he doesn't just look at the economy. He looks at a number of indicators, yeah, from the economy, just like the atomic scientists, actually. And then he predicts what the trend is. And he's yet to fail in identifying the correct trend. What he says is that he tells us what he tells us straight, because he's got no axe to grind. Yeah? And he classes all the other, or most of the other sort of news media, as what he calls prostitutes, because they don't tell you what the truth. They tell you what you want to hear, and they also have to have one eye on governments. They've got another eye on markets, because what they say could either cause a market downturn or whatever. So they've got to be careful. So you don't always get the news. So a lot of the stuff that we should hear, we're not hearing from the BBC, ITV, and seeing front page news in the. At least that used to be the case. But it seems as if that things are getting so crazy that even mainstream news media are coming up with interesting statements. This is what The Economist last year talking about the collapse is coming. The Guardian, April this year, global debt now worse than before the financial crisis. Really? You know, it talks about 225% of GDP. The debt, the world debt, is so ridiculous that there's no way that debt can actually be repaid. You know, countries need to take immediate action to improve their finances before the next downturn. And they're saying, well, you know, the next downturn, folk are actually blaming China as responsible for this global debt. I remember back in, I think it was 2016, I've got a friend in Handsworth. I shall not call his name to protect the guilty. But, you know, he was saying, yeah, man, put your money into China. You know, China is steaming ahead, man. Put your money in, you're going to make loads of money in China. June came, and of course he wasn't a prophet. You know, I mean, we laugh about it now. June came, and the Chinese economy took a 40% downturn. 40% hit, yeah? Now, most of that didn't actually hit the front page news. At the time, the day on which their markets went down catastrophically, there was an incident in China. I don't know whether you remember. There was some kind of mis-storing. You know, they were storing these canisters that just exploded. I think it might have been in Shanghai, but that was massive news because I don't think there were that many deaths, but I think the level of the explosion was like a mini earthquake. Yeah, and that was on all the front page news. But on the same day, the markets had nosedived. And, you know, as they say in the British press, it was a great day to bury bad news. But they blame China. What Gerald Celente says is that, no. You know China? China is like the canary in the mine. Remember what happened to the canary in the mine? What happened to the canary in the mines? Anybody? You know? Come on, you did this at school. I'm sure you did. Those geography lessons when everybody was asleep.
Would it protect the gas?
Yeah. That's it. So when the canary keels over, you know, you don't stand around asking any questions. You just make your you hit for the exit. And they're saying with China. So when China keels over, that's it. China is the canary, is what Celente says. You know, he says we are in the middle of a global economic meltdown. You don't get this from too many other people. Yeah. The Economist talking about the biggest stock market crash and economic collapse is imminent. That's from The Economist. You know, that was in August last year. There is nothing anyone can do about it. Yeah. Now, the reason that we're surviving is these guys, they're still pumping rubbish money into the economy, and you and I are agreeing to spend it. That's the only reason it works. Yeah. Because you all know this thing about, you know, this thing should have nosedived years ago. The reason it hasn't is because, you know, they've been printing money, fake money, because it's not based on anything, as you all know. I'm sure you've heard this a million times. If you and I went down to our garden shed and started to print money, yeah, they'd lock us up for fraud. When the government do it, they call it quantitative easing. Yeah, it's still fraud. It's rubbish. It's not based on anything. It's fake money. But it works because you and I still agree that, you know, we're going to use it as currency to spend. When it collapses now, yeah, the level of world debt is such that there is nothing they can do now to rescue it. It's just, the debt is just amazing. I've got a couple of slides on that later. The next economic collapse in the market is already overdue, they say. Yeah, they're talking about this in August last year. And you know, there's all sorts of things that they say that's coming. Celente is angry because he's saying, look, you know, the reason that it's like this is because of these wicked people at the top. He says nothing's changed from the days that Jesus Christ chased out the money changers of the temple with a whip. I think he wants a whip to chase some of these guys out. He just says it's a different group of names. Man doing the same dirty deals, propping up the markets to enrich themselves, which is what they were doing in the temple. That's why Jesus got so mad. Yeah? He says, so what's going to happen? He says, there's no way out. You know, Celente has a plan. What's your plan? Celente's plan, he says, my plan, I've got the 3 Gs. Gold, guns, and the getaway plan. You know, he's not a Christian. You know. What's your plan when the markets turn upside down? Yeah, I'll come back to that in a minute. or less than a minute, very quickly. Yeah. He says markets will continue to melt down, currencies crash. He talks about China, all the rest of it. Where's this from? This is from this year, I'm sure it is. July 2018. Global debt hits a new record, 247. Anybody know how big the UK economy is every year? Yeah, 2 trillion. Yeah, that's the UK. Remember, it's the world's 5th largest economy. Yeah.
Wow.
247 trillion is the current globe debt, right? I think that is a fraction. I think that what they haven't factored into there that's the actual debt. What they haven't factored in are the promises that they need to pay for. So all the people that have pensions that need to be paid, yeah, around the world, all the money that they have because they don't. When I pay for my pension, yeah, they don't take my money and put it somewhere, saving it for me. They spend it, and then they hope that the new generation that comes paying their pension is what's going to pay me mine. So if you put all those commitments, financial commitments, yeah, that will probably go up another 10, 15 times. So the debt is absolutely amazing. And you've got this, I was listening to a Radio 4 program not long ago, and in September, and this woman, Anne Pettifor, again, she's talking about, the crisis already starting. Again, just Google her name and you'll see what she's been saying. I'm going to sort of rush now because my time's gone. Yep, and he just says things are going to get worse. Again, she says the work of the people of God is to prepare for the events of the future. Remember, this is about information gathering, sifting the information. What do I need to act on? What do I need to action for me and my family? Yeah. Remember what happened in Greece, when they had the problem. Yeah. It was like a mini event to what is coming on the whole world. What did they do? Well, when the economy went nosedived, yeah, the shelves went like this. How long do you think it would be before your supermarket of choice lost everything that, the shelves were clean? How long did it take? How many days?
Days.
Within.
Yeah, it's going to be hours. No, it's going to be hours. It's going to be hours. Yeah? So what would you do? What would you do? What do you do? Yeah? I've lost count of the number of places that I've been to and spoken and asked this question. What would you do? What would you do? The markets are going down. Yeah? Now, some folk will say, well, we're not to prepare for a crisis because the Lord said that in the time of trouble, our bread and water will be sure. Yeah. That's in the time of trouble. We're not in the time of trouble. Yeah. So what would you do? What would you do? Yeah. Seventh-Day-Adventists who know what's coming. Yeah. Remember, there's going to be a little time of trouble before the main time of trouble, and we should all know the kind of details, the sort of things that are going to be happening in that little time of trouble. What Seventh-Day-Adventists know, they've had this information in advance. You know what? There are going to be Seventh-Day-Adventists who will find themselves making compromises that they would never have made had they made themselves ready, prepared for the crisis. I'm not talking about after the time of trouble. After the time of trouble, the Lord says, you know what? In fact, there's a wonderful statement from the Ellen gives. This is what, if you prepare, right? Even if you're in your country living segment of your retired place and you're still growing stuff to survive on, she says folk are going to come and they're going to take it from you. Yeah. In the time of trouble, God will be the provider. Remember, when the time of trouble starts, probation is closed. So God's people are not actively witnessing anymore. What they're doing is just together praying. They're being severely tried and tested. That's the time that they experience the time of Jacob's trouble, but it's also the time of which Job is a type. They go through that severe trial. Yes, they are sealed, but they are still tested. Noah was still tested when the door of the ark was closed. And he was shut in, everybody else was shut out. He had to sit on that thing for 7 days before anything happened. And then it says that he was severely tested, him and his family. Just imagine, where are we wrong? Oh my goodness, it's day 5 and there's nothing happening. Where are we wrong? Did we miscalculate? Did God really say 120 years? Did he really tell us to come aboard this ark? And do all that stuff. Severely tested. Yeah. And so that's going to happen to God's people too. Ellen White was shipped off to Australia when she upset everybody. When she was talking about promoting the work around 1888 that Wagner and Jones, Elliot Wagner, and Joseph Wagner and Elliot Jones had. I said that right way. No, Alonzo Jones and Elliot Wagner. Get it right in a minute. The message that God had given to them and how crucial that was, to the point where she says, you know what? The message that they have, righteousness by faith, is the third angel's message in truth. She used the word in verity, in truth. That's what it's all about. Everybody was upset with her. Conference presidents all around, everybody was upset with her. Only way they can get rid of her is say, you know what? You need a holiday. Ships her off to Australia. Where was Australia? Australia was where they sent criminals. Australia was the back of beyond. Nothing's going to happen there. Yeah? What did she do when she was there? Yeah? Marvellous. That's where she wrote Desire of Ages. Desire of Ages written in 1898. And various other books. Can't remember them off the top of my head now. But she did a powerful work down there. Set up colleges like Avondale and so on. Amazing work. I think it was in 1891 that she was there. When she arrived in the country, the Australian economy, as such as it was, took a nosedive. And leading up to that, she got the brethren to prepare. How did they prepare? They were preserving fruits and all this kind of stuff. Stuff that most of us don't really know how to do. And yet these are the skills that we need to have. I don't think anybody here actually attended we had a weekend preparation for the end time Christ, for the crisis of the end times. We had a weekend where we looked at all this kind of stuff out in Wales a couple of weeks ago actually. Fantastic, and folk will come in. We've got people who keep bees with their honey. We've got people who were teaching how to preserve food. There's a group who have set up a farm in Northampton called Advent Farm. They came, man, talk about blessing. It was inspired. Someone gave me the name. We invited them to come and do a presentation on the Sunday. It was fantastic. When I tell you, not only these people country living, they've got the farm, they brought the produce. The reason we know about them is that in September, when they had the press open day, they took their produce, callaloo, pumpkin, sold out in no time. Yeah, God bless them. And I was speaking to them over the weekend, and I said, so how long have you been an Adventist then? He came into the church. This is the guy, one of the guys that there was a guy and a girl. They brought the whole team, but there was a guy and a girl who did a presentation, or man and a woman, I should say. The man said, I've been in the church since 2006, and here we are. How long have we been here? 2006. I spoke to the lady. How long? Oh yeah, I came in a couple of years before him. I've been here since 2004. 2004, yeah. And you come to some of us, and you come even to the. I don't want to offend anybody, but you come to some of us, and they talk about diet. Yeah, man, I'm still trying out this vegetarian thing. 30 years, 40 years down the road, we're still trying it out. You don't agree with me, Really? That's almost as bad as the situation in fact. Let me not just say where. Protect the guilty. Talking about fasting and praying. Yeah. It's amazing, I fasted. I'm not going to tell you what I did because people are going to think, might take it the wrong way. Okay, what was I going to say? We were talking about fasting and the need that God's people need to fast. They need to fast, yeah? A couple of weeks ago, I fasted for 3 days. Just took water. I've never fasted for 3 days before, It was an amazing experience. Fast and praying. 3 days. Fantastic. I recommend it. I really do recommend it. It's the kind of thing that we need to be doing. Anyway, we were talking about, not about 3 days, we were talking about just fasting, need to fast. And one of the elders in this church stood up and said, you know what, me don't really fast, you know, me can't take hungry. So what? I was invited to speak a few years ago, back in the 1990s. Myself and John Stevenson were invited to do, well, John was invited and he asked me to go with him to do some Daniel and Revelation seminars at the largest Pentecostal church in Birmingham. And we did that. It was in the 1990s. Yeah? Did it with young people and so on. 20 years later, I get a call out of the blue, and this guy says, you know, forgive me for calling you, but I got your number from so-and-so, and they know someone from Handsworth Church, and I was asking for you, and they gave me your number. This was a young man, little teenager, 1990. He's now in charge of evangelism and teaching in that church. You know what he did? He's inviting me. I'm a Seventh-Day-Adventist, by the way. He's inviting me to come, and he says, look, our church, this is a Sunday church. We are having, we're fasting for a month. And we want you to come along and open our fasts for us. Yeah? So I thought, oh, you know, because health background, he wants to talk about health and whatnot. So no, we just want you to speak to us because we're praying. I said, what sort of things are you fasting and praying for? He says, well, we want God to show us the truth, you know. Ooh. We want God to, you know, let us know, you know, what is truth. We want to follow him. And we'll be fasting during the day, but we'll be eating in the evenings, and so on and so forth. He's asking, I said, now that church is a bit like Grantham. That is where you get the bishops for that church. That's where they go to retire. So in that church, in terms of membership, there are about 3 or 4 bishops of the Pentecostal church there. In addition, obviously, to the pastors and the youth pastors that are there. So I go along, and I stand in the Sunday pulpit as a Seventh-Adventist, and I'm preaching to these people. I'm thinking, you know what? I got people in my church that can't take hungry, and I'm speaking to a Sunday church, and they're fasting for a month. What's going on? What's going on? You know, when I finished the sermon, they invited me back to do a Seventh-Day-Adventist series. Yeah, in fact, they didn't call it Seventh-Day-Adventist series, but they wanted me to do a series on end times. I said, thank you, Jesus. So I went, now I'm doing a 16-week program. Yeah? 16-week program, and I'm teaching them Seventh-day Adventist stuff that we spurn. Teaching them. You know, when God said, you know what, be careful that somebody don't take your crown. Watch out, because the final movements are going to be rapid ones, and we're going to be seeing whole, do not one person here, then you'll see whole churches just come because of how they're being led. You know, I mean, I can give you story after story. We're doing a presentation in Derby just to say where we are. I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to finish in 5 minutes. We're doing Adriel and I were doing a presentation in Derby, and it was in the community, so they'd booked this community thing, and we were talking. It was end time stuff, and the communications director for one of the 3, I think it was the main one, Seventh-day Church of God, was actually at the radio station in Derby doing interviews, and he'd heard about the presentation. He'd come in and slipped in the back seat while we were actually doing the presentation. Well, right at the very end, oftentimes when you do a presentation like that, folk want to ask you questions, so sometimes there's a queue that's formed. And he stood in the queue, and he came up to us and he said, he introduced himself, told us who he was, and he said, I want you to do what you've done, these sorts of presentations. I want to take you to Jamaica, all expenses paid. I want you to do this across the whole island. Yeah, so we said, well, actually my diary is kind of full. No, we didn't. We said we would love to. And you know, we went across the whole, they gave us Sabbaths off. Right? Although it's Seventh-day Church of God, so we were able to go to our own churches, and we did presentations in I'm not from Jamaica, some of these places I can't remember, but it's Queen something. Queen. No, anyway. But we went across the whole island. We went up to, and Adriel and I would split. So Adriel went up to Mandeville. You know, I'd go down to Portmore. You know, Clarendon. You know, went to Ochi.
St. James.
Wow.
Montego Bay.
Montego Bay, went to Montego Bay, went to Ochi on the way to Montego Bay, I think it is, yeah. We were in Kingston, we were, you know, and a lot of the presentations were actually in the open air, in the market square. So they put all the PA stuff in that, because you know, there was just no building that was big enough in that area. So it was all open air. Man, it was wonderful. And we thought, you know what, you know, we're just two lay people, you know, two lay people, and we're out doing this thing. And non-Adventist, you know, it's the sort of thing that we said was going to happen. And I can tell you, listen, it's happening big time. You multiply that several times around the world, and stories, you've heard their story, you know, if I didn't come today, you wouldn't know, because, you know, you wouldn't know that this sort of stuff is happening, but it's there. So, what are we doing? What do you prepare? I want you to hear what we have done. I'm advising people that they should have at least, minimum, 3 months worth of preparation in their homes. You should be able to survive for at least 3 months. When things go down, everything crashes, God's people cannot be running around like headless chickens like everybody else. Because we still have to function, we still have to witness, you know, we still have a work to do. We can't be like everybody else. As I said, folk who have empty bellies will find themselves making compromises. You've got screaming children, elderly parents who are hungry. You're going to be making compromises, doing stuff that you would never compromise and do. So take the time to make the preparation. Yes? And then when you do it, you know, we've bought these big, what are they? I think they're 40-litre big bins that you get from, we actually ordered them online, but after that, B&Q had them. They've got yellow handles, yes. They're great big things, yeah? And, well, we've got a big family, so, you know, one of those each month, yeah? And then you have to learn, you have to plan that you rotate them so that stuff is not getting out of date, and you keep on doing that, yeah? And you keep doing it, and then it becomes a way of life, all right? At least 3 months. Preferably 6 months. Yeah? Then folks start to complain about, I haven't got room. You will find room at the time when you're hungry. In fact, you said, you know what, I could have thrown that out and this out and whatever out. Yeah? Make the room. This is not something that we can afford to mess about with. But you have to make the preparations. Minimum 3 months, but at least 6. And you'll be surprised how God will bless. You know, even in Europe, Germans are being told to stockpile food and water for civil defence. By the way, the water bit. What we've done is we've bought a water filter. Let me just finish with this, otherwise I'll go on forever. We've bought a water filter that you can put the one end in a dirty canal and it will filter out and you will get the nectar of the gods, that's water, at the end, pure juice. Yeah, pure water. Because the amount of room that you will need to stock up, you know, the amount of water, even if you say, okay, 1 litre a day in terms of drinking water, that's still going to be a lot of water that you have to stock up. So it's nice to have it, I think, perhaps for the first few days, but then in terms of longevity, what you need is a water purifying system. And there are so many out there. I think the one that we bought, in fact, if I tell you how much, I don't want to put you off, right? But I can't say it's not expensive, but it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile. I mean, it costs £220. Yeah?
Benefits.
But we have it, and we've had it for a few years now. And we're adding to it. Yeah? Counterintelligence. It's about gathering the information, it's about understanding the information, and it's about acting on that information. God has called us at such a time as this. This is not a game. The Seventh-Day-Adventist Church is not a club. You know, this is absolutely serious. And God has put us here, not just so that we can be ready with our families, but so that we can warn others that are around us. They can see the preparations that we are making and want to know, well, why is that taking place? God's placed us here for a witness. You are here for a reason. God has given you all an assignment. Understand what that is. God bless you.
Amen.